Animals sure can surprise you, and not always in the best way. This grumpy cat shocked everyone when it suddenly took off with the neighbor's puppies. What made it do that will totally catch you off guard. The Andersons were starting to panic. Daisy's puppies were missing. They had the bottles ready, expecting to feed them, but now the pups had vanished. It had already been a few hours since their last feeding, and they were just gone. These puppies were tiny, way too small to wander off on their own. Where could they possibly be? Everyone was getting more anxious by the minute. The puppies were so little and helpless. Meanwhile, Daisy didn't seem worried at all. She was just rolling her ball around like everything was fine. Max went outside to check the trees, just in case an owl or hawk had swooped down. It didn't seem likely. How could a bird come back again and again? But still, the puppies couldn't have walked away. Their eyes weren't even open yet. Max and Amy looked everywhere. Then, across the street, their kind neighbor, an older woman, came out and waved them over. She said she might know something. She'd seen something weird from her window earlier, and it just might explain everything. Even so, what she saw was hard to believe. It was lucky they had such a good relationship with their neighbors. Everyone in this area looked out for each other, especially when it came to pets. This neighborhood was the kind of place where people still showed up for one another. If someone had a toddler and needed help, someone else would step in. It was a good setup, neighbors helping neighbors. But no matter how close-knit a place is, strange things can still happen. The Andersons were right in the middle of this friendly community. Across from them lived the sweet Mrs. Turner, and next door were the Johnsons. A bunch of other friendly faces filled the block. Everyone knew each other, so it wasn't out of the ordinary when Mrs. Turner came to share what she saw. Being so close made it easy for news to travel fast, especially when something unusual happened. So when the Andersons decided to expand their family, it wasn't a secret for long. But it wasn't a baby they were after. They wanted a puppy, just as messy, just as cute, only with more fur. First, they needed to check with the Johnsons, who had a big open yard. They asked if it would be okay to put up a fence so the puppy could run around safely. The Johnsons were on board right away. They'd actually been thinking of getting a pet too. But they did have one small request. They wanted to visit and play with the puppy once it arrived. The Andersons agreed happily. With that sorted, they began the search for the perfect little pup. But finding a young one turned out to be harder than expected. Since they had little kids at home, the Andersons wanted a puppy that could grow up alongside them. A bunch of friends and neighbors also told them it would be better and safer to start with a puppy rather than an adult dog. So they began looking around nearby shelters, but had no luck finding a young pup in their area. Then they got a phone call from a local farmer just outside town. He'd heard they were looking. His kids went to school with the Anderson kids, so word had gotten around. The Andersons drove out to the farm, not really sure what to expect. But as soon as they arrived, their jaws dropped. A whole litter of fluffy black puppies came running toward them. It was the happiest welcome ever. The farmer explained that the family could choose one puppy to bring home and raise. It was everything they had been dreaming of. One tiny pup instantly clicked with the kids. She was full of energy, super playful, and clearly more excited about meeting the family than anything else going on around her. Some people say the dog picks the owner, and it really felt that way in this moment. The kids were in love, and the bond was instant. The farmer was glad to see such a good match. He wanted each of his puppies to find a loving home, and he knew the Andersons would give this pup just that. Before they left, he gave them one piece of advice. He believed that it was good for a dog to have one litter of puppies before getting spayed. He had his reasons, and since the Andersons had never owned a dog before, they trusted his experience. What they didn't know was that this advice was outdated. Dogs don't need to have puppies before being spayed. It doesn't give them emotional fulfillment or health benefits. In fact, there are health risks with dog pregnancies, and spaying early is often safer. But the Andersons weren't aware of that. They hadn't made up their minds yet, but they decided to wait until the puppy turned one before doing anything. They thanked the farmer and his family for this wonderful gift, then headed home with their new puppy in tow. They named her Daisy and instantly showered her with all the love in the world. Daisy wasn't just adored by her family, she quickly became the sweetheart of the whole neighborhood. Mrs. Johnson, their next-door neighbor, gave Daisy a little head scratch every morning over the fence. And sweet old Mrs. Turner? She never left the house without dog treats in her coat pockets. She'd often run into the family during their daily walks, and Daisy would get so excited to see her and grab her usual snack. Daisy was one happy little dog who seemed to believe the whole neighborhood was her kingdom, and honestly, no one could blame her. Everything was going great. Until one morning when everything suddenly changed. Daisy was about 8 months old when it all happened. One morning, like always, the family opened the back door and she bolted outside, tail wagging. It was usually the time of day when she got her head scratched from Mrs. Johnson next door, something she looked forward to every day. Daisy loved that little moment, but today someone else was waiting by the fence. She hopped up on her back legs to peek over, expecting to see her usual friend. But sitting right on the fence post was a cat. Not just any cat. This one looked like it had claimed the area. The newcomer just sat there, calm but clearly in charge. Before Mrs. Johnson could even come outside to greet Daisy, the cat, whose name was Bella, gave the puppy a quick smack on the nose. It wasn't a hard hit, but poor Daisy was stunned. She jumped back in surprise, not sure what had just happened. A moment later, Mrs. Johnson came hurrying out. She scooped Bella off the fence and gave Daisy a few kind words and a comforting scratch through the fence. Bella hadn't meant to be mean, she just hadn't expected a bouncy puppy right up in her space. And Daisy definitely hadn't expected a swat first thing in the morning. It was clear the two of them were going to have to figure things out. After all, they were neighbors now, and neither one was going anywhere. The Johnsons had been wanting a cat for a while, and when they finally found Bella, they felt an instant connection. She had been through a lot, and they were determined to give her a peaceful, loving home. Her story wasn't easy. It all began when animal control got called to an elderly woman's house. People nearby were worried about her. There was a strong smell coming from the home, and something didn't seem right. When the officers arrived, they found a heartbreaking situation. The woman was clearly overwhelmed. Her house was full of things, and even more full of animals. There were cats and kittens everywhere. As soon as people walked in, they scattered in all directions. The place was dirty and cluttered, and it was hard to tell just how many animals were living there. None of them had enough food or clean water. Some were very skinny. It wasn't that the woman didn't care. She did love them. But she simply couldn't take care of so many animals, not in her situation. Bella was one of the cats in that home, but unlike many of the others, she wasn't scared. She sat right on the woman's lap, calmly watching the officers, even as the others hid. She was affectionate and calm, clearly longing for attention. The officers were shaken by what they saw. It was a dangerous situation, not just for the animals, but for the woman as well. They knew they had to act. They gently explained that they would need to take most of the animals into care. The woman cried right away. It was clear how much she cared, but they had to do what was best. In the end, she was allowed to keep 5 of her cats, and Animal Control agreed to check in on her and help out when they could. The rest, including Bella, were taken to the local shelter. It was a sad day, but it opened a new chapter for Bella, one that would bring her to the Johnsons and eventually into Daisy's life, whether the puppy liked it or not. Turns out, Bella was actually one of the few animals the old woman had been allowed to keep. After the animal control team helped move most of the pets out, they also arranged extra support for the woman. A social worker got involved. Someone came to clean up the home, and she started receiving food deliveries. Things seemed like they were looking up. But sadly, they weren't. About 6 months after that first visit, the food delivery service noticed something wasn't right. The woman had stopped answering the door. They let the social worker know, and someone came to check on her. What they found was heartbreaking. The old woman had passed away, sitting quietly in her favorite chair. It looked like she had been there for a few days. And right on her lap was Bella, still curled up, like she was keeping her safe. Bella had stayed with her, refusing to leave her side. With no family to take the woman's pets, Bella was brought back to the shelter. That's where the Johnsons found her. She looked so sad. You could tell she had been through so much. They didn't hesitate. They wanted to give her a better life. But there was one big thing they had to know before bringing her home. Bella was pregnant. If they were going to adopt her, they'd need to be ready for some kittens, too. And they were. The whole family welcomed her with open arms. She was gentle with people, but the pregnancy made her more sensitive around other animals, which explained her swat at Daisy. She wasn't trying to be mean, she was just on high alert. It didn't take long before Bella was ready to give birth, and when she did, she was incredible. She looked after her kittens with so much care. She let the family come close, even let them hold the babies, but she never strayed far. Bella was a natural, a truly wonderful mom. She settled into the Johnson family like she had always belonged. But just as things were starting to feel calm, something happened that no one could have seen coming. One night, the Andersons were sitting around the dinner table when one of the kids said they heard kittens. They had just been over at the Johnsons earlier that day, so they thought maybe they were hearing those same little meows again. But it didn't make sense. The kittens were still way too tiny to be wandering around, and Bella would never let them out of her sight. Then the parents heard it too, faint little cries. They all stopped eating and started looking around. What they found left them stunned. Daisy was in her bed, giving birth to puppies. They had no idea she was pregnant. The sounds weren't kittens, they were her newborn pups. Later, when they checked the backyard camera footage, they found out another dog had jumped the fence weeks ago. That quick visit had changed everything. And now, their still young Daisy had become a mom herself. Thankfully, Daisy and all the puppies were healthy. The family was thrilled about that, but they knew it wouldn't be easy. They now had to figure out how to support her and care for a whole litter of puppies. But the next day, things took another wild turn. When they walked into the room to check on Daisy and the puppies were gone. Panic kicked in immediately. First they checked on Daisy, thinking maybe she had moved them. But there she was, casually playing with her ball in the kids' room, totally relaxed. She didn't seem bothered at all. The puppies, however, were nowhere to be found. They were barely a day old. There was no way they could have gone far. The family looked everywhere, inside, under furniture, even out in the yard just in case. They even scanned the trees for hawks just in case something unthinkable had happened. That's when Mrs. Turner from across the street came walking over, holding a look of concern. She had seen something from her window that might explain everything. They couldn't believe what they were hearing. Mrs. Turner told them she saw Bella, the cat, carrying the puppies away, one by one. It didn't make any sense. Bella had never liked Daisy and always acted annoyed around her. What was she doing with the puppies? And why hadn't Daisy stopped her? Mrs. Turner said Bella had slipped in and out of the Andersons' house several times, and each time she took a puppy with her. Daisy didn't even react. She just let it happen. The Andersons knew they had to act fast, so their first stop was the Johnsons' house. They rushed across the street, completely rattled, and their friends were just as stunned when they heard what had happened. Then everyone jumped into action, searching the house for Bella and for Daisy's missing puppies. When they finally found her, they couldn't believe their eyes. Bella was lying down, surrounded by not only her kittens, but also all of Daisy's puppies. And she was nursing every single one of them. It was the most unexpected and touching thing they'd ever seen. Why would a cat take puppies and feed them? But the answer slowly became clear. The Andersons had been quietly worried ever since Daisy gave birth. From the moment the puppies arrived, Daisy just wasn't interested. She didn't want to lay with them. She didn't want to feed them. No matter what they did, Daisy kept choosing to cuddle with the kids instead of caring for her pups. She was still just a young dog, and it was starting to look like she simply didn't have that mothering instinct. Every time a puppy tried to nurse, she'd get up and walk away. The pups had been healthy at birth, but as the hours passed without food or warmth, things were getting risky. The family was stressed and heartbroken. They tried everything to help. They went to the vet, got formula, and started bottle feeding the puppies around the clock. It took so much time and care, but the pups started doing better. Still, something was missing. They cried constantly, needing the comfort of a mother, and Daisy just didn't respond. It wasn't just hard on the family, it seemed like someone else nearby was feeling it too. Bella, the cat, couldn't stand hearing the puppies cry. The sad little sounds coming from next door were too much for her. She had just become a mother herself, and those instincts were strong. It made her furious that the puppies weren't being cared for, so she did something about it. She followed the sound of the crying, found the puppies alone, and began carrying them, one at a time, back to her own bed. Once she had every last one, she curled up around them and started letting them nurse, right alongside her kittens. The families watched in awe. The puppies weren't crying anymore. They were finally warm, full, and comforted, for the first time since they were born. There was no way they could break up this little patchwork family. Bella had chosen to be their mom, and it was working. Both the Andersons and the Johnsons agreed to care for all the animals together. They helped each other with feeding, cleaning, and eventually introduced soft food as the babies got older. Bella raised them like they were her own. And once the puppies grew up a bit, Daisy came around too, not as their mom, but as a goofy, loyal friend. In the end, it was a happy little neighborhood family, thanks to one tough cat with a heart of gold. Daisy never really figured out how to be a mom, but once the puppies got a bit older, she was all in on playtime. She loved running around the yard with a whole crowd of tiny paws chasing after her. It became their favorite game, and Daisy soaked up all the attention. When the puppies and kittens were big enough, it was time to find them forever homes. The Andersons made sure each one went to someone they trusted, friends, neighbors, even a few people right there on their block. That way, they could still see them from time to time. Each family decided to keep one baby. Daisy's family kept one of the kittens, and Bella's family kept a puppy. So now both homes had one cat and one dog each. Funny enough, the puppies raised by Bella sometimes acted more like cats than dogs, but that just made them even more lovable. And the most important step? Both Daisy and Bella were spayed. No more surprise litters, just calm, happy days ahead, filled with play and snuggles. They could finally just be pets, not parents. Over time, Bella even came around to Daisy. She still gave her the occasional grumpy stare, but there was no more hissing or swatting. They had been through too much together. Like it or not, they were family now. What would you do if your puppy suddenly went missing? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with a friend. We've got plenty more amazing animal stories coming your way. See you next time.